Welcome to Executive Protection Insights. I'm Liam.
Hmm.
There are moments in executive protection where nothing looks wrong, but everything starts moving in the wrong direction. No alarms, no sudden threat, no obvious trigger, just a gradual shift, a slow tightening of space, a change in timing, a loss of flexibility that you don't fully feel until it's already happening. And by the time you recognize it, you're already committed. Today's episode is called The Route That Looked Perfect on Paper. This was a structured movement in a major U.S. city, not a high-threat environment, no active concerns, nothing in the intelligence picture that suggested elevated risk. It was the kind of day where the challenge wasn't danger, it was execution. Multiple meetings, multiple locations, a tight but manageable schedule. Everything built around precision. The team had done what good teams do. They prepared. They didn't rush the advance. They didn't cut corners. They took the time to understand the city, not just at a surface level, but in terms of movement, how traffic behaves at different times, where congestion builds, where it clears, where space opens up, and where it disappears. They ran the routes, not once, multiple times, different times of day, morning patterns, midday flow, afternoon buildup. They compared options. They looked at alternatives, and in the end, one route stood out. It was clean, direct, efficient, minimal turns, minimal exposure to unpredictable intersections. It avoided known congestion zones. It moved through areas that were stable, familiar, and consistent. It was the kind of route you feel confident about, the kind of route that makes the rest of the plan easier. And that's exactly why it was chosen. The day started without friction. The first movement went exactly as expected. The vehicle was staged. The executive came down on time. The transition was smooth, no delays, no hesitation. They moved. Traffic was cooperative. Spacing was good. The driver maintained control of speed and distance. The lead agent monitored the environment, but nothing required attention. The city felt predictable. The route performed exactly the way it had during the advance. Every turn, every stretch, everything aligned. They arrived at the first location on schedule. Entry was controlled. The team settled into position. And just like that, the operation found its rhythm. That feeling where you're slightly ahead of everything, where nothing surprises you, where you're not reacting, you're anticipating. The meeting ended, the team prepared for the next movement. This was where the primary route would be used again. Same path, same logic, same expectation. The executive exited. The vehicle pulled forward. Doors opened, they moved. And for the first few minutes, everything felt exactly the same. Traffic moved, not fast, not slow, just steady. The driver held a comfortable pace. Spacing was consistent. The environment was calm, predictable. And then something changed, not suddenly and not dramatically, just enough to register. Traffic ahead began to compress. The spacing between vehicles tightened slightly. The flow slowed. At first, it didn't mean anything. Urban traffic does that. It expands, it contracts, it fluctuates. You don't react to the first signal, you observe it. The driver eased off the speed slightly, maintained distance, watched the pattern. The lead agent noticed it too. Not a concern, just a change. And then the change didn't correct itself. The compression held, then increased. Vehicles ahead began to stack closer together. Brake lights appeared more frequently. The flow wasn't gone, but it wasn't free anymore. It was restricted. The rhythm of the road had changed, and that matters more than speed. Because once rhythm breaks, predictability follows. The team stayed quiet, observing, processing. No reason to act yet. But awareness was rising. The vehicle slowed further. Now movement was inconsistent. Short bursts forward, then stops, then slow rolls, and the kind of traffic that feels unstable. Not fully stopped, but not moving either. The lead agent checked navigation. Traffic data updated an incident ahead. Several blocks forward, not a full closure, but enough to reduce lanes, enough to create pressure, and pressure travels backward. It doesn't stay at the point of impact. It expands and it compresses everything behind it. Now the situation had a shape, but the problem was already developing because the vehicle was inside that compression and the route they had chosen, the one that was efficient, the one that was direct, the one that had minimal turns, was now limiting their options. There were fewer exits, fewer ways to break away. The same design that made it perfect was now making it restrictive. The vehicle slowed to a crawl. The driver adjusted, carefully, maintaining space. Looking for openings? There weren't many. Vehicles filled the lanes. Side access was limited. Movement was controlled by the traffic, not by them. Inside the vehicle, the atmosphere shifted. Quiet, but active. The executive noticed the slowdown. A simple glance. A question. Everything okay? And that moment matters because how you respond defines perception. The lead agent answered calmly. Traffic ahead, we're monitoring. No urgency, no concern, just information. But internally, everything was accelerating. Because when movement slows like this, exposure increases. The vehicle becomes predictable, less dynamic, less flexible, and predictability is not where you want to be. Time started to stretch. 5 minutes felt longer, not because of the delay, but because of the uncertainty. Because now the team wasn't just moving. They were evaluating, constantly. The lead agent looked beyond the immediate, not just the vehicle ahead, but further, down the road and across the sidewalks at intersections. Watching behavior. Because when traffic compresses, environments change. Drivers become impatient. Pedestrians behave differently. People notice things they wouldn't normally notice. Nothing specific yet, but the conditions were shifting, and experienced operators feel that before they see it. The driver spoke quietly. There's a possible turn ahead. Not confident, not uncertain, just identifying an option. The lead agent leaned slightly, looked, evaluated. A narrow street, partially open. Not ideal, but possible. The decision window was small. Stay on the route and push through, or break off and enter something unknown. Neither option was perfect. Staying meant committing to the congestion. Breaking off meant losing the predictability of the route. The lead agent thought about distance, time and environment, options, and then made the call. Take it. The driver moved carefully, a signal, turn. The vehicle shifted off the main route, and immediately, everything changed. The street was narrower, quieter, but also less structured, less predictable. No clear flow, no established rhythm, just space and uncertainty. The team adjusted instantly, positioning tightened, awareness sharpened. The driver slowed, scanning, looking for continuation, trying to reconnect with a viable path. The lead agent watched everything, not just the road, but the environment, doors, windows, people, movement, because this wasn't planned movement anymore. This was adaptive movement, and adaptive movement requires more from everyone. They moved forward, turned again. The street opened slightly, then narrowed again. Navigation updated, guiding them toward a larger road. But navigation doesn't see everything. It doesn't see behavior. It doesn't see environment. It just shows direction. The vehicle approached the next intersection, paused, looked, then merged, back into traffic. This time movement existed, not smooth, but moving. The driver increased speed slightly, spacing improved. The environment stabilized, not fully, but enough. The team recalibrated, breathing slowed. Awareness stayed high. They were moving again. Control was returning. Gradually, they continued. Adjusted route slightly, avoided the worst of the congestion, and eventually reached the destination. A few minutes late, but intact. No incident, no escalation. From the outside, nothing happened. But internally, everything had shifted. Now let's slow this down, because this is where the lesson lives. The route wasn't wrong, it was logical, it was efficient, it worked. Under the conditions it was tested in, but it lacked resilience. It depended on stability, and stability is never guaranteed. That's the first reality. Efficiency is not control. Control comes from options, and that route didn't have enough of them. The second reality is commitment. The moment you enter a route, you are making a decision, and the fewer exits that route has, the more committed you become, and commitment reduces flexibility. The third reality is timing. Everything worked until timing shifted, and once timing shifts, everything else follows. The fourth reality is awareness. The team didn't wait. They recognized the pattern early. They understood where it was going, and they acted before it became worse. That's what kept control. And finally, control itself. Because control is not something you establish once. It's something you maintain, moment by moment, decision by decision, adjustment by adjustment. If there's one thing to take from this story, it's this. The best route is not the fastest one. It's the one that gives you choices. Because choices are control. And when you lose choices, you start losing control with them. In the next episode, we'll look at a situation where communication failed at the worst possible time, where everyone thought they were aligned, but they weren't, and how quickly that creates risk. Until then, stay sharp, stay prepared, and stay operational.